Well, today we're going to talk about some metrics to consider when measuring leadership performance. My name is Karl Bimshas. I'm the leadership advisor at Karl Bimshas Consulting, where we help busy professionals who want to manage better and lead well do so without becoming a jerk. Let's talk a little bit about good leadership and lousy leadership, right? I mean, when you think about good leaders, right, they're people who listen to me and who make me feel appreciated, who get things done, and a lousy leader is the opposite of that, right? And all those are true, but that's not really measurements. And one of the dangers of leadership is that it can become a popularity contest if you're not actually measuring success and progress. So we're going to share today about a dozen or so, maybe as many as 18 ways that you can be measuring leadership in your organization. Now, this works, obviously works if you're in a very large organization in a way of managing your team of leaders. But it also works if you're a self-leader, a solopreneur of some sort. Maybe you can use some of these metrics to improve your business and improve your relationships with, contractors or vendors or customers, whatever it may be. Probably where this hits the best for people are either small businesses who are managing a group of folks or a large department. And you may already have some of these metrics coming to you from somewhere else, and you can just divvy it up to the department level. And it's for people who have never thought about actually measuring leadership at all. It's a really good place to start, is start looking at leadership as more than just, hey, I like how they make me feel or they get things done. There's some, what I would say, some core metrics that you ought to start looking at. So let's do that. So employee satisfaction engagement, which is the rolling mean scores for a series of survey items related to the leader's relationship and performance. What does that mean? Well, you want to be asking, whether you're using like a net promoter score or you're using, Gallup's 12 questions or something that's your organization's been using. If you're a very large company, there's probably one that you're using on a yearly or even quarterly basis. But what you want to do is find the key questions that are working well for you so that you really get what the employees are looking for and how satisfied are they, how engaged are they. And you want to ask those same questions over a period of time. And then that's where this metric comes in, is because you're able to see differences in a leader's performance or lack of performance over time and see how it's affecting the employees directly. So the key takeaway on this one is to make sure that you're asking these same questions in the same way at a fairly regular interval so that you can get more than a snapshot measure, but you can kind of get a trend over time. Next one is employee turnover or quit rate. Quit rate is the number of employees who left the organization or the department and divided by your head count. So, are people quitting and at what rate? It's a good measure that leaders should be looking at. Related to that, somewhat, is promotions. What's the number of promotions within a time frame divided by the average head count for the work group? Now, you might be in an organization where there's not a lot of promotions, so maybe this metric doesn't match. But if you're in a large organization and there's kind of a lot of churn and everybody's being encouraged to grow and have some leadership development or personal development, this might be a bigger number. So promotions is one other metric to look at for leadership. The other one is absence rate, which is the number of days absence divided by your full-time employees. Now, people are allowed to be sick, people are allowed to be out, and it's really none of your business why they're out or why they're taking that time off. But what you want to do is take a measure of it so that you can kind of get a baseline, right? And what is, either per leader or through the organization, what is your absence rate? And again, taking a look at this over time, you can begin to pinpoint, is there a particular department or is there particular individuals who their absence rate is higher? And then you can start asking some good leadership questions like, hey, why is that? Another one is labor utilization variance, right? So this is your total hours or days that are allocated to a project, and you divide that by the hours or days that have currently been delivered to that project. So this is, right out of project management, but you can think about it as you're taking on a new customer or, maybe it's something in graphic design or it's a project that you're working on or an agreement and has this, you're figuring it's going to take 16 hours or you're estimating maybe it's a 45-day project, something like that. So you keep track of, okay, how much time is allocated to this project, and then where are we with it, or how much did it take to actually deliver the project? So did you overestimate or underestimate? Again, these are things to look at over time. It's just like reading body language, right? When you notice one thing, one tick, that doesn't mean anything. You have to look at a collection of things to get a good sense of body language, what's going on. So the same thing with leadership performance. You've got to take a look at several of these metrics and over time to see what they look like. One-on-one meetings completed with team members, the percent complete. It's crucial to be meeting with members of your team one-on-one formally, and whether that's once a week or once a month or, God forbid, once a quarter. It's something that you want to make sure that you're doing. And when I say formally, I mean that these are regularly scheduled meetings that both you and the employee, your teammate, know. They know the agenda. Preferably, they're the one who's running it. It's keeping you informed and abreast of what's going on, sharing tips, things that they've learned, looking for some help. It's just a place for you to one-on-one speak together. It's a great red flag because to see who's not doing it, because most lousy leaders will find any excuse in the book not to meet one-on-one with their team members, and it's always going to be some fire drill that they had to go through with the client or some other urgent deadline that was more important than meeting with a member of their team. So if you hear that something else is more important than meeting a member of your team, you probably don't need a measure on it. You should know that that's a sign of a lousy leader or a lousy leader in making. So that's why you want to take a look at how many meetings in your organization was a leader planning on having with their team, these formal one-on-one meetings, and how many did they actually complete. Great metric to take a look at. Another one is on target or on time delivery, right? This is the percent complete by a due date. This is really measuring commitment, right? And one of the red flags on this one is, if you've got a team that's constantly asking, hey, what's the latest I can get this to you? Or what's the latest you need this? That's people who are not managing their time. Those are people who are being managed by the targets that are coming into them. So, percent completion by due date. It's a great thing to take. Here's a very simple one to measure. Senior leadership team scorecards. Do they have them? Yes or no? If you've got a team, even if you're just a small organization, you've got a right-hand and left-hand person helping you out in some way, and they are responsible for performance of people, process, technology. Do they have scorecards to see how that they're doing? The scorecards are things that you as a leader should be looking at, and so that they should have. So do you have that? Yes or no? Great metric. Very, very simple to figure out. The other one is strategic planning time. This is where we pull out the trope, which I really don't like, but it's true. It's like, how much time are you working on the business versus in the business, blah, 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 right? But it's true. Kind of the more that you kind of advance from a leadership standpoint, or the more responsibilities to have, the more time you've got to put into planning strategic initiatives. And I'm not telling you how much time that should be, but what is your goal? Is it 1 hour a week? Is it 10 hours a month? Is it 1 day a month, 1 day a quarter, or a week a quarter? How much time are you putting on your strategic initiative and thinking about the future and the things that you want to do versus how much time you're actually doing it? So let's say you planned on spending, an hour a week on strategic planning, and you actually didn't do that, or you overspent on it. Maybe you spent 10 hours on it. Is that a good utilization of time? Now, only you are going to be able to define that, but if you're not measuring it, you have no way of knowing. Another thing to look at is leadership development hours or dollars invested in yourself, in your team, or your organization. So again, what was the goal, and how'd you do on that goal? Now, a lot of people don't even consider leadership development or any kind of development hours. But if you're not getting better at the job or better interacting with people or whatever the goals are for improvement, what are you doing? It's kind of a wish or a prayer, right? So you might want to be thinking about, maybe it's an hour a week, maybe it's a lunch and learn kind of environment. Maybe it's, there's some companies that close their office for a few hours each week or each month and say, hey, here's your personal development time. Be working on that. So, What are your goals, or how much money are you spending on leadership development? And if you're not spending any, that's something maybe you want to take a look at. Another thing to look at, it's fairly common, is your uptime or downtime, right? And what are the trends on availability for this? Now, this generally has to do with machinery that helps with the throughput, right? If you think about it with your copiers or your printers or the internet, your app, how much uptime, downtime does it have? But it could also be, if you're running a laundromat, the washing machine and dryers, right? So think about generally, it tends to be machinery, but you could be innovative, and maybe it's a process. But what is the uptime or the downtime? And measure that over time and see what kind of effect your leadership is having on uptime or downtime. Another thing to take a look at is the client conversations. And these are, I would say, planned conversations. Depending upon how many clients you have, or it's really independent of how many clients you have, you should be planning to have some conversations with them. Whether it be like what's coming up, what's new, how have you been, what's going on, do you know anyone else? There's hundreds of things you could be talking to your clients about. So what's your target? And then, I delineate between analog and digital. And the difference would be like, if you're sending emails out to your clients because they're on your newsletter, or you're sending, these blast emails, I wouldn't really call those conversations, because you don't know if they're reading them, you don't know if they're seeing them. Unless they're responding to you. And if they're responding to you, that's not necessarily a conversation. On the other hand, you might be having a great text conversation back and forth throughout the course of the day, and that would count. So I would look at your conversation as somewhat real-time conversation that you're having with your clients. So how many did you plan on having, and how many did you have? And you can measure this on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever works for you. As we get into somewhat on a sales approach potentially, is what is your customer acquisition cost, your CAC, right? And so this is your marketing expenses divided by the number of customers you acquired. So you've got to think about, how much does it cost me to find a new client? Now, it varies for industry, but that's where the CAC ratio is. And, it's about 25% is the ideal. Your mileage may vary, right? But what's the variance of that measured over time? Another thing to look for is qualified leads per month. What's your target and what did you actually accomplish? If you want to grow the business, you've got to be able to find some leads. So again, leadership plays a role in this, either in setting the target and or in achieving that target. So that's another measure that you want to take a look at. Recurring revenue, also called same account growth in some circles. With your existing clients, your existing portfolio, how much did you want it to grow from a financial standpoint versus how much did it actually grow? Leadership plays a role in that, as does new revenue. This would be your new business. Same metric, right? What's your target versus your actual? So there's another thing that I've come up with that you might want to take a look at, which is your lousy leader tax. And you're going to run this over a 12-month period for each leader that you have on your team. So there's 4 parts to this. The first part is your employee turnover dollars. So you estimate 20% of the annual salary for any employee that has voluntarily left the organization, right? So people who have left on their own accord, take 20% of what their annual salary was. That's one number that you're going to add. The next one is client defection dollars. Now, lost customers under the leader's span of control is what this is. So you multiply the client defection rate by 4. So, for example, if you had a 5% client defection rate, multiply that by 4, you'll get 20%. So subtract the adjusted percentage from your expected profit, and that'll give you a number. So the third category is the drag on productivity dollars. You want to divide the estimated revenue by the number of team members. This is also known as revenue per employee. The estimated productivity drag of a lousy leader is 10% of the operating productivity. Now, you might say, well, what's a lousy leader? Well, look at some of their results in the prior metrics and, use your judgment. The fourth one is discretionary nonsense dollars. This one is what I consider to be the total miscellaneous expenses that are accumulating to keep the lousy leader in a status quo position. Now, a lot of people don't like this number because if you are, these are like the silly bills, as it were, or very expensive bills. Let's say, you're constantly paying for their parking tickets or moving violations or something like that. Or if you're a large organization and there's some NDA work or things like that, and you're paying some hush money or you're paying some, attorney's fees or whatever it may be. One, if you're paying those fees, you're probably not so great of a leader yourself, but be that as it may, whatever those dollars are that you're keeping this star in your mind or this rainmaker for whatever reason why this leader just can't go, you've convinced yourself of something. That would be your discretionary nonsense dollars. So you take the sum of those four categories, and that's the tax that you and your organization are paying to keep this lousy leader in their current position. It's probably not worth it, but, to each their own. That's going to be up to you. So now what? What are the next steps? Well, I'd say the first thing to do is do a self-audit. Run through the metrics that we just did. How many of them do you currently use, if any of them? Maybe they've inspired you to come up with some new ideas or new ways of making a metric work for you. Or you have some that are existing that I didn't mention today. So run through and see how you're doing as a leader as best you can. The other thing I'd say is you've got to commit to measuring leadership performance. It's not just something you can do occasionally, and it's not something that you can just have be like your gut and like, oh, I feel good or I think like I did a good job. You've got to have some hard measurements around this, and we've given you plenty of measurements to choose from so that it's not necessarily so that it fits your organization in the culture that you want. So I would start with start with 4. Maybe you've got some existing ones and you want to add a couple more that I've shared with you today, or maybe just start with 4 that you just learned today. You haven't been measuring anything yet. So I would pick, choose a hybrid of some sort. Pick a couple that are very easy for you to measure, and maybe some that would be difficult to measure, but that's a direction you want to go, and it's important, so you're going to invest some time and some resources in getting those measurements set up. And finally, if you need any help, feel free, of course, to reach out to Karl Bimshas Consulting for further leadership development and accountability. We'd certainly love to be able to have a conversation with you and see if we can help. If you go to karlbimshasconsulting.com, you'll find a lot of resources. Many of them are free, but you can also fill out a questionnaire there and see if working with me and my organization is a good fit for you. And we'd love to start that conversation. If you have trouble, you're not quite sure how to spell Karl Bimshas Consulting, or you just want something that's a little quicker, you can go to learnfromkarl.com, and there we've got 3 pre-made engagements, and one of them is probably going to be right for you, so you can go to learnfromkarl.com and start defeating any of the lousy leadership that might be creeping up in your organization. So that's it for today. Hope this finds you well. Make sure you keep advancing confidently in the direction of your dreams and help others along the way. Thanks.